What if the story of Jack and the Beanstalk wasn't just about a curious boy and a magic plant, but something far older and stranger? Before it became a bedtime fable, this tale was part of a much larger pattern that stretches back over 5,000 years. Across continents and cultures, there are stories of young heroes climbing impossible heights, entering forbidden realms, and stealing sacred treasures from giants, gods, or monsters. Jack may be remembered as a fairy tale hero, but was he really a hero or just a boy who trespassed where he didn't belong and stole something that didn't belong to him? Keep watching. Because in this episode, we climb the beanstalk not just to chase gold, but to uncover the bones buried beneath the story. In the version most of us grew up with, Jack is poor, hungry, and impulsive. He trades the family cow for a handful of so-called magic beans, earning a scolding from his mother and a night without supper. But overnight, those beans grow into a towering beanstalk that pierces the clouds. Jack climbs it and discovers a strange realm above the sky where a hulking giant hoards golden treasures. Jack sneaks into the giant's home not once, but 3 times, stealing a bag of gold, a hen that lays golden eggs, and a harp that sings on its own. When the giant finally gives chase, Jack scrambles down the beanstalk, axe in hand. He chops it down just in time. The giant falls, crashes to earth, and dies. Jack and his mother live happily ever after. But no one ever really asks, was Jack the hero or the intruder? The first known printed version of Jack and the Beanstalk appeared in 1734, and it was a parody. That alone tells us the story was already familiar enough to mock. Jack, the Beanstalk, and the thieving of magical treasures were likely well-worn tropes, passed around in oral tradition long before it was written down. By 1807, the tale took a turn, one that said more about the culture than the character. In this version, Jack learns that the giant murdered his father and stole his family's fortune. Suddenly, the story becomes a tale of righteous vengeance. Jack isn't a trespassing thief anymore. He's the rightful heir. This shift in tone reflects the values of the time. Victorian audiences wanted moral clarity. A boy stealing from a monster for fun, unacceptable. But a boy avenging his father and restoring justice. Now, that's a proper hero. Then, in 1890, folklorist Joseph Jacobs collected older oral versions of the tale. Here, Jack isn't noble, he's clever, a trickster, a boy who climbs, steals, and runs, not because he's avenging anyone, but just because he can. In these older versions, morality is murkier, and Jack is more interesting for it. Over time, the story's shape didn't change, but Jack did. He can be a victim, a hero, or a thief, depending on the audience of that era. Folklorists classified Jack and the Beanstalk as ATU 328, the boy who stole the ogre's treasure. And once you know to look for it, you start seeing versions of this tale everywhere. Across Europe, India, the Middle East, Africa, even in indigenous American traditions. The details shift with the culture, but the structure remains hauntingly consistent. A poor or marginalized boy, often seen as foolish or lowly, crosses into a supernatural realm. There, he steals powerful treasures, objects of magic, wisdom, or eternal life. These treasures are guarded by monstrous beings, ogres, giants, dragons, even gods. Sometimes he gets away clean, sometimes he's punished, sometimes he barely escapes with his life. But the structure is the same. The outsider breaks the rules, takes the sacred, and returns changed or cursed. In myth, these figures are known as culture bringers, tricksters who trespass on divine territory to bring something back for humanity. Think Prometheus stealing fire, Odin stealing the mead of poetry, Gilgamesh slaying the guardian of the cedar forest. Jack belongs to this lineage. He climbs the beanstalk not just for riches, but to do what mortals are not supposed to do: cross into the other world and take what doesn't belong to him. Beneath the surface of Jack and the Beanstalk lies a ritual structure recognizable across cultures, a symbolic ascent, a theft from the divine, and a violent severance from the supernatural realm. What appears to be a child's fable is, in fact, a distillation of much older cosmological beliefs, encoded through metaphor and preserved in oral tradition. The beanstalk is not just a plant, a vertical conduit between realms. In mythological terms, it is the axis mundi, the symbolic center of the universe where heaven, earth, and the underworld converge. This structure appears in countless traditions: the Norse Yggdrasil, the Mesopotamian ziggurat, the shamanic ladder of the Siberian steppe. It is always the same idea, a pathway between the mortal and the divine, accessible only through ordeal or transgression. In ancient traditions, beans were anything but ordinary. The Pythagoreans avoided eating them, believing they housed the souls of the dead. In some cultures, beans were planted in graveyards to commune with ancestors. So when Jack trades a cow for beans, he isn't buying food, he's buying access to the spirit world. In mythological terms, to ascend the axis mundi is to leave the human plane and enter a liminal space, a zone outside of time, beyond the boundaries of the living. This is the otherworld journey seen in myths like the descent of Inanna into the underworld or the doomed search of Orpheus for his lost love. Jack does not simply rise. He crosses into a realm that is not meant for the living. It's a symbolic death. And like all those who trespass into sacred space, he returns altered, changed, not necessarily wiser, but no longer innocent. The items Jack steals aren't random loot. They're gifts from the divine, the harp that sings on its own, a symbol of music, memory, and the soul's voice. The hen lays golden eggs, regeneration and sustenance. Gold represents immortality and divine favor, not just wealth. In many myths, sacred treasures are guarded by monsters, dragons, giants, or demons. The giant may represent a guardian, keeping divine power from the unworthy. Jack doesn't defeat him in battle. He outwits him, a classic trickster move. When Jack chops down the beanstalk, it's not just to kill the giant, it's to cut the tether between worlds. The bridge is burned, the journey is over. Jack has returned from the land of the dead, bearing gifts, but there is no going back. In 2016, a team of researchers conducted a phylogenetic analysis to trace the origins of folktales based on their linguistic patterns and cultural mutations over time. One of their most striking findings: ATU 328, the boy who stole the ogre's treasure, can be traced back more than 5,000 years. Its likely birthplace: among the Proto-Indo-Europeans, a prehistoric people who lived near the Black Sea and Caspian region. A culture long vanished, but whose myths continue into the present through the stories we still tell. The tale's survival is not a matter of coincidence, but of adaptation. Oral traditions mutate, but they do not disappear. They absorb local color, shift moral values, swap names and faces, but the structure remains intact. A boy, a boundary, a theft, a transformation. The endurance of this story is a reminder that folklore is a kind of cultural fossil record, a transmission of ancient anxieties and desires, preserved not in stone, but in memory and metaphor. Jack and the Beanstalk isn't just a story about magic beans and a happy ending. It's a much older tale, one about crossing into forbidden places, stealing what isn't meant for us, and surviving the journey back. Jack may look like a hero, but he's really something more complicated. He's a trickster, a trespasser, a thief of sacred things. He doesn't slay the giant out of justice. He kills it to escape. In the end, this is less a fairy tale and more a myth of transformation. A story about what happens when you leave the world you know, take something powerful, and come back different. Because stories like this always leave us with one final question: was it worth the climb?